Britain took control of the area known as Palestine following the defeat of the Ottoman Empire, which ruled that part of the Middle East, in World War I. The land was inhabited by a Jewish minority and Arab majority, as well as other, smaller ethnic groups. Tensions between the two peoples grew when the international community gave the UK the task of establishing a national home in Palestine for Jewish people. This stemmed from the Balfour Declaration of 1917, a pledge made by then Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Britain's Jewish community.
Between the 1920s and 1940s, the number of Jews arriving there grew, with many fleeing from persecution in Europe, especially the Nazi Holocaust in World War II. Violence between Jews and Arabs, and against British rule, also increased. In 1947, the UN voted for Palestine to be split into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem becoming an international city. That plan was accepted by Jewish leaders, but rejected by the Arab side and never implemented. The soldiers of Allied Arab Legion forces fire the 6th of March 1948 from East Sector of Jerusalem on Jewish fighters of the Haganah, the Jewish Agency Self-Defense Force, based in Jemin Moshe Quarter of the West Sector of the city during the First Arab-Jewish conflict. Image source, Getty Images, image caption. The soldiers of Allied Arab Legion forces fire on fighters of the Haganah, the Jewish Agency Self-Defense Force. In March 1948, how and why was Israel created? In 1948, unable to solve the problem, Britain withdrew and Jewish leaders declared the creation of the State of Israel. It was intended to be a safe haven for Jews fleeing persecution, as well as a national homeland for Jews. Fighting between Jewish and Arab militias had been intensifying for months, and the day after Israel declared statehood, 5 Arab countries attacked. Map showing the 1949 armistice lines. Presentational white space. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were forced out of their homes in what they call al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. By the time the fighting ended in a ceasefire the following year, Israel controlled most of the territory. Israel's borders explained in maps. Jordan occupied land, which became known as the West Bank, and Egypt occupied Gaza. Jerusalem was divided between Israeli forces in the west and Jordanian forces in the east. Because there was never a peace agreement, there were more wars and fighting in the following decades. Israel map today. Map showing Israel's boundaries today and Palestinian territories. Presentational white space. In a war in 1967, Israel occupied East Jerusalem and the West Bank, as well as most of the Syrian Golan Heights, Gaza and the Egyptian Sinai Peninsula. Most Palestinian refugees and their descendants live in Gaza and the West Bank, as well as in neighboring Jordan, Syria and Lebanon. Neither they nor their descendants have been allowed by Israel to return to their homes. Israel says this would overwhelm the country and threaten its existence as a Jewish state. Israeli military commanders arrive in East Jerusalem. After Israeli forces seized East Jerusalem during the Six-Day War 1967, image source, Getty Images. Image caption. Israeli military commanders arrive in East Jerusalem during the Six-Day War in 1967. Israel still occupies the West Bank and claims the whole of Jerusalem as its capital, while the Palestinians claim East Jerusalem as the capital of a hoped-for future Palestinian state. The U.S. is one of only a handful of countries to recognize the city as Israel's capital. Palestinian territories, a timeline. In the past 50 years, Israel has built settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, where more than 700,000 Jews now live. Settlements are held to be illegal under international law. That is the position of the UN Security Council and the UK government, among others, although Israel rejects this. What is the Gaza Strip? Gaza is a narrow strip of land sandwiched between Israel and the Mediterranean Sea, but with a short southern border with Egypt, just 41 kilometers 25 miles long and 10 kilometers wide. It has more than 2 million inhabitants and is one of the most densely populated places on Earth. In the wake of the 1948-49 war, Gaza was occupied by Egypt for 19 years. Pro-Palestinian demonstration in Jordan's capital Amman. Getty Images. Palestinians, 14.3 million. Total population, West Bank 3 million, Gaza Strip 2 million, Jordan 2 million, Israel 2 million, Syria 0.5 million. Source, Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics. Israel occupied Gaza in the 1967 war and stayed until 2005. During that time building Jewish settlements, Israel withdrew its troops and settlers in 2005, though it retained control over its airspace, shared border and shoreline. The UN still considers the territory to be occupied by Israel. What are the main problems between Israelis and Palestinians? There are a number of issues which the two sides cannot agree on. These include what should happen to Palestinian refugees, whether Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank should stay or be removed, whether the two sides should share Jerusalem, and perhaps most tricky of all, whether a Palestinian state should be created alongside Israel. What efforts have been made to resolve these problems? Israel-Palestinian peace talks were held on and off between the 1990s and 2010s, interspersed with outbreaks of violence.